Good afternoon, and thank you for joining our OKI 811 webinar. Today, we will be reviewing the OKI 811 Excavator portal, which is OKI 811's online ticket entry platform, and we'll discuss some best practices for submitting safe and efficient locate requests. My name is Renelle Freeman. I am the Director of the Contact Center Operations here at OKI 811, and I'll be your presenter today. Just a little bit of housekeeping items. All attendees are in listen-only mode. So if you have questions throughout the webinar, you can enter them into the chat feature, and I'll either answer them throughout the webinar or at the end of the webinar. Today's topics, we'll start out with talking about excavator preparation and responsibility, some important information that the excavator can do to prepare for the dig site and the responsibility of the excavator as well. We'll discuss some vital information that is required on every locate request to ensure a quality locate request, and discuss best practices for entering the locate request details. Then we'll do a little review of the OKI 811 Excavator portal entry fields and the mapping tools associated with that. And we'll talk about scope of work limits as well, and again, questions at the end of the session. So first up is excavator preparation and responsibility. So knowledge of the work site prior to submitting the locate request avoids confusion during the process and saves time for everybody involved. So first up, get to know your work site prior to contacting OKI 811. Get your address, get your driving directions if it's needed, map out your locate area to determine where your excavation path is going to be. And then another important thing to get ahead of time is the access issues. Are there dogs or locked gates of that sort that would keep the locators from getting to the site, and provide that specific information. It's extremely important, as if you did not put in those access issues, it could lead to delays in the project. Next step, while you're out on site, white line it. So that's the best practice of marking the outer limits, the route or the perimeter of the proposed excavation with white paint, flags, or stakes. That's going to make the process faster for the locator when he gets out there on site. And then establish a field contact. So as of November 1st, the law specifies that the locate request is required to include the name and phone number of an excavator field contact with actual knowledge of the excavation site and the project. So gather that information so that you can put it on your locate request. Then determine your start work date and time. So when does your crew plan to start? You can plan ahead by giving a maximum notice of 10 business days or a minimum of 3 business day notice. And then you're ready to contact OKI 811, preferably on the portal at oki811.org. And then you'll want to confirm before digging. So the excavator is required to confirm positive responses have been received by each of the members listed on the ticket, and verify there are markings on site as well. And of course, you want to respect the tolerance zone. The tolerance zone is a strip of land that is 2 feet on either side of the facility, plus the width of the facility. You want to exercise reasonable care by hand digging or other methods with approval of the owner or operator if you're digging around that tolerance zone. So the OKI 811 Excavator portal is the most efficient method to ticket entry. So when you get ready to submit your locate request, just go over to oki811.org and click on the Excavator portal. It's available 24/7, 365. We now have various ticket type entries that you can put in, including emergency, normal. We have a new pre-excavation meeting ticket request. You can put in a demolition ticket, a design survey request. Those are the main new locate requests that you can put in. Then we also have options for existing tickets, such as updates and second notices. The new portal is mobile optimized, so it's got a very user-friendly interface that adjusts to screen size or device. And of course, there's no hold time. You're not waiting on the phone for an agent to answer your call, and you have the ability to directly submit the ticket to the facility operators without OKI 811 even reviewing it. Your excavator information is saved, so you don't have to enter that each time. You also have some find and view ticket management features. And then there's also some new ticket draft features that will allow you to save a ticket as a draft if you want to enter the information now, but you're waiting to get some additional information, or you just want to get it ready to submit it tomorrow or the next day. Then you can save it as a draft and then go back to it when you're ready to actually submit the ticket. So when you're submitting a locate request, there's some vital information that is required and necessary for a quality locate request. This is just to ensure the facility operator or the locator can determine the accurate dig site. The first vital piece of information is the project location, of course. So that means a physical address, an intersection, or driving directions to the site. If you're providing a physical address, you want to be sure to provide the complete address, including the house number, prefix, street name, street type, street fix. When you break down all of the elements of the address and you have that house number and the prefix, the street name, the street type, and the suffix, they all work together to help determine where that address is located within the given city. Including that complete address information when you're entering the information on the Okie 811 portal map will help you find the location, and of course give the locators the correct information as well. And the prefix in the address tells you which side of town the address is on. So this is a very important part of finding the address. And then street type also is very important. It identifies which road the address is located on, especially if there are more than one type of road with the same street name. Example, there can be a 2505 Northwest 60th Street, like in the example on the screen, but there could also be a 2505 Northwest 60th Place or Terrace or Circle that are in the same exact area that could be confused. So be sure that you include that information. If a physical address is not available, that's okay. Provide directions or specific intersection if that is the case. So when you're doing that in the address field on the Excavator portal, you're going to enter the street the work is taking place on in the street name field. And again, include the prefix, the street name, the street type, the suffix. You're going to hear me say that multiple times because that's going to help you with your map search, and then it's going to help the locators find the exact location. And then in the cross street field, you'll enter the nearest cross street, including the prefix, street name, street type. It should be the street intersecting with the street name that you have listed in the street name field. So in the example, we have Northwest 60th Street as the street where the work is taking place, and then the closest cross street is North Villa Avenue. So I may be providing driving directions from that intersection, or I may be working at that intersection. When you get down to the driving directions field, of course, you'll want to start from the closest intersection to the dig site. So most likely that's going to be the intersection that you have listed in the street and cross street fields. You're going to want to provide compass direction and distances between each turn. Provide what side of the road it's on. Provide property identifiers or other physical identifiers. All this information works together to help the locator find the dig sites. So in our example, from the intersection of Northwest 60th Street and North Villa Avenue, they're going to travel west 100 feet to a pole number 1234 on the north side of the road. All the information is there that we need to find that pole, including an identifier to help them find that pole number. If you're doing intersection work, you will include the intersection details and what corner of the intersection you're working on in the driving directions field, because if you don't have an address, you have to have some driving directions. So you can put that intersection information in the driving directions field, and then if your work extends outside of the intersection, then you'll provide that information in the marking instructions field, which we'll talk about here in just a moment. So the next vital information is those marking instructions. This is a description of where the area, where the digging is taking place on the property. It's very important that you request the area, the exact area that is being excavated on. So requesting more area to locate than what you need can be a drain on the facility operator's resources, and it can take more time for the locate request process. So just keep that in mind when you're trying to determine your locate area. Some examples of locate instructions or marking instructions would be a certain part of the property, such as front yard, backyard, full property, or rear easement, but only if you need that entire part of the property. If you have a specific area in the front yard, like a radius around a stake or something, then provide that specific information. But if it is the entire front yard or backyard, then you can state in the marking instructions to locate the front yard. If you do need a radius of a physical object, such as a stake or a pole or something like that, then you include the radius that you need of that location and what the general area is on the property. So an example would be locate 25-foot radius of the stake on the northwest corner of the house, providing how big of an area you need located, what they're locating around, and where it's at on the property. Very simple. A certain width of a linear path along a physical path, such as a white lined area, a pole line, a fence line, a temporary line for a drop, a road. Include a starting point, an ending point, compass direction, total distance, side of the road, how wide of a path, all this good information to help the locator find the location, know where to start, know how much to locate, and how far to go. So there's a couple examples shown on the screen here. On the top left, locate 5 feet on either side of the white markings from the north side of the house going north 150 feet. Locate 5 feet on either side of the temporary line from the structure going northeast approximately 150 feet to the pedestal. And then some of the examples over here on the right are locate 5 feet on either side of existing fence line on the north side of the property going approximately 200 feet. And then if it's an example from an intersection where you're doing some work, start from the northwest corner of the intersection, locate 10 feet on either side of the white markings on the west side of the road working north 150 feet. These are all very clear and simple starting points, how far you're working, how wide of a path you need, and then an ending point, whether that be by distance or a physical ending point. So the OKI 811 portal mapping is a very important piece of submitting a locate request. The area drawn on the OKI 811 portal map determines what facility operators are notified on the locate request. So on the screen here, we have an orange polygon marked. If that is the indication of the dig site, that is determining what facility operators we're notifying, anybody within this orange polygon. So if you were to mark an area that was not large enough because you didn't encompass the entire dig site, then you would possibly not be notifying the correct facility operators. So the drawing must encompass the accurate location, must encompass the entire marking instructions or locate area that you've described on the ticket. So if it was like the front yard of 2505 and both sides of Northwest 60th Street, then this polygon would need to encompass both sides of Northwest 60th Street also to ensure we're notifying the facility operators in that area. That's how precise it can be. So any slight discrepancies in the marked area can lead to facility operators not getting proper notification. A majority of the OKI 811 members register the service areas by GPS points, so even a small discrepancy can cause a big issue. So there are 2 ways to search for an address or intersections on the OKI 811 Excavator portal. The first option is to search via the auto suggest search feature. This is a lot like Google when you're entering information. It's looking for results that match your input. So in the OKI 811 portal, when you're using the auto suggest, you can put in an intersection, such as the one at the top left here for Cargo Road and Highway 7, and look for that result and select it. You can put in an address, or you can just put in a street. And if you notice here, we've got Northwest 56. We didn't put street, place, circle, court, so it shows the different options. Now this is a broad search, so it is searching multiple counties and towns. So you almost want to be sure that when you're inputting the information that you're selecting the correct location as well, because there are a lot of towns that can have the same streets and addresses. So when you're putting in the address, be sure to include, again, the full address, the street prefix, the street name, and the street type and suffix if that's applicable. And then in some cases, for the address results, when you're searching for an address, like this example of 2505 Northwest 60th Street, it will also auto-mark the map for you, which I'll show you here in just a little bit as well. But intersection or street results won't do that. They'll have to be actually manually put into the worksite fields. So if you enter an address in the auto suggest, it will put the information down into the worksite fields. But if you're just entering a intersection or a street, it's more of just a search. So you still have to manually enter the information down here in the worksite fields. And just a little tip too, when you're searching for a highway intersection with another road name, start your search with the road name versus the highways, because sometimes highways can be labeled differently in different counties and they can be hard to find on any map. So like in the example I have on the screen, I've got HIGHWAY 7. It's in our system as State Highway 7, so sometimes it just may be a little bit difficult to find. So start with your other road name, so Cargo Road and Highway 7 when you're searching. You can bypass the auto suggest search feature that we just talked about and just skip right down to the worksite address fields and perform a search from there as well. I do suggest if you're going to do that, you do have to enter the county, the place, the address, and then enter a cross street as well, that closest cross street to that location, because all of those elements are going to help you find the location on the map. So when you enter the worksite details into those fields, you can click on the little search tool to open up the Find panel. And this is going to be a little bit more similar to what our old portal looked like as far as the results go. We have multiple results related to this search. We have parcels, which is the address that it found with the boundaries. The exact address is basically the same, it's just the point. If you've entered a cross street, it may find the intersection that you've entered. And then exact street segment is the 100 block, and we'll talk about those in more detail here in just a moment. So if the address is found by the mapping system, so if you're using that auto suggest feature to find an address, you may see a couple of different selections to choose when doing that. The first one is the parcel selection, and it's usually the priority one because that's the parcel selection, the boundaries of the parcel. Most likely, if you're working, at an address, you're working somewhere within the boundaries of that address. The other one is the addresses selection, and it's basically the same thing. It's just a point. So basically, if there is a parcel, you still would see the parcel, but if there is no parcel and there's just a point like this example right here, then you could use that to identify the location as well. So there are multiple data points within the portal mapping to aid in finding your dig site. It contains address points and parcels, street data, 100 block data, and more. If the address is not found by the mapping system, that's okay. There are lots of things that we have in place for you to find the location. So if it's not found by the auto suggest search, go ahead and enter the information down into the worksite fields in this area in yellow here and include that cross street like we talked about before and clicking that search tool to find the location. So let's talk a little bit about those map search results and what they mean. Exact street segment. What this means is the exact address was not found. So 420 Northwest 70th Street as our example address was not found exactly, but it did find the exact 100 block that it falls within. So it found the 400 block. And so when you choose that exact street segment on that find tool, it's going to highlight that segment in red. And it's kind of hard to see on here, but there are little labels on the street that show those 100 blocks that says 499 at the left side of that line, and at the right side of the line it says 400. So it's telling you the 400 block is somewhere between this north-south street right here and this area right here. This is kind of a new development area on our maps, so there's not a whole lot to see here, and 420 has just not been added yet. But if you use the exact street segment and you have some surrounding address points, there's a lot of ways that you can really determine where 420 is, even if the map does not find it. So the surrounding address points on the same street show the logical order of those addresses ranging from 2 to 400. You can see the points on some of the areas here. Against the aerial here, we've got 252, 300, and you can see the numbers are increasing as I go west here. There's a 408 right here. There's a 500 block over here. So logically, it makes sense that 420 should fall in this area between 408 and where the 500 block falls. I turned on aerial in this instance to kind of see how big the property is. And so that's why I kind of outlined it in the yellow to determine the 420 is most likely this larger property right here. That's how you can use the tools and the search results on the map to find your location. The other results are the intersections. So that means the exact intersection was found. So if you've entered a street in the street name field and a street in the cross street field, again, including the prefix, street name, street types, adding all that information in there is going to help find the intersection. You can use that intersection result to look for a starting intersection for your driving directions if you need to follow out driving directions, or of course, if you're doing work at that intersection. Exact street just means that the exact street was found, but not the exact address or the 100 block. And depending on the length of that street in that town, it's going to highlight the full length of the street on the map. So of course you would have to know some other information about that or a closest cross street to get you there. But if you would happen to forgot to put the cross street in the worksite field search, there is a way to find it in the map search. So when it found the exact street and we clicked on Northwest 70th Street, it will expand intersecting streets as well. So then you can click on the intersecting street and it'll take you right to that area. So let's talk about some of the mapping tools that we have available. Of course, there's a pan tool. That's just to pan the map with your mouse. We have an identify tool. This is a new tool and it's very handy. Basically, you can turn that tool on and then click anywhere on the map to identify certain criteria about the location, such as address, street, county, place. We made additionally add some other stuff there that might be helpful at some point, but that's the majority of the general information that's there now. One thing that this tool is extremely helpful for, and some of you may have noticed this when you're putting in tickets, sometimes you have corner addresses that you're not sure which street the address is assigned to. And it can be questionable sometimes. It doesn't always mean whatever street the driveway is on. So in this example right here, we have like a 6105 and a 2501. And if we're not familiar with the 100 blocks in this area, then we may not know which one of those addresses exist with whichever street, whether it's Northwest 60th Street or North Villa Avenue. So you can click on the Identify tool, and then you can click on the area, and then it'll show you the results there. So 2501 is Northwest 60th Street, and 6105 is on North Villa Avenue. So that way you're making sure that you're providing the most accurate information. One other thing that you can use that tool for is to find the place location, the place being the city or the town. Sometimes it's questionable, especially in suburban areas around Oklahoma City or Tulsa, places like that where they kind of all just bleed together. You're not sure which town it is or it's questionable. You can click on that Identify tool, click on the area, and it'll show you the place name. If it doesn't show the place name, then that means it's rural. So it's outside of the limits, it's unincorporated. There's also a measurement tool to measure distances. You can use this to measure feet, miles, and yards, and it displays a little label on there for you after you click to start the measurement. So it displays the measurement while you're measuring, and then when you're done, it displays a final measurement. But you can use that to follow your driving directions, or if you're needing to determine how big of an area is on the property to mark, then you can use that to kind of measure that. Some other mapping tools is, of course, the Draw Work Area tool. So this is the default mapping tool. So when you first open up a portal ticket to submit a new ticket, you don't even have to click on this button to start drawing on the map. It's the one that is the default. So that activates the drawing tools, and then you can use one of the drawing tools to mark the dig site. And we have 3 different drawing tools, and the use of these is based on what type of work you're doing or what your area is. So the first one is the line tool. So that's marking obviously a linear path of excavation. So if you're working along the roadway in the easement, doing a pole line, a fence line, anything that has like a linear path with one starting point, one ending point, you can use that line tool for. The area tool is more of a free-form polygon drawing tool for any type of excavation. It is the default tool. It was just previously the line tool as a default, and now we just switched it over to the area tool, make it a little bit easier for some of you. So it is to encompass boundaries, or like if you're needing a front yard or backyard or full property, then you would use the area tool. And then the circle tool is to mark a radius of a physical point that you can see on the map. We highly suggest that if you use this tool that you can actually see that point on the map in order to make sure you're getting the correct radius. We also have a zoom to point tool. So this is basically just a zoom to a GPS or latitude and longitude point. And one great thing about it is you can enter multiples. So you can enter your first one, zoom to point, go back and enter a second one, and you can do as many as you want. Obviously, in most cases, you don't need too many, but some people have 2 or 3, one for a starting point, one for an ending point. Specifically on linear jobs, it comes in handy for you to find that linear job on the map and mark that beginning point and that ending point. But then also when you go to map it, you can make sure that you encompass that beginning point and that ending point. So it makes it really handy. One thing that our system does do is it will validate the GPS that you entered on that ticket. So once you enter the GPS or the Latin long into the zoom to point tool, it does actually automatically put it in the remarks of the ticket, and then it validates it when you go to map it. So if you go into the mapping and you don't encompass any of the GPS coordinates that you've entered on there, it's going to let you know that, because of course that's a red flag that maybe you don't have the correct area marked or you provided the wrong GPS. So be sure to, if you get that validation error, to look that over and make sure the information is correct. And then lastly, we have map layers. This is just the various layers that we have. Okie 811 is the normal streets layer. Being aerials, Okie 811 labeled is your main aerial layer that also has those parcels and address points on top of it. So it's like the best aerial to use. But there are some other aerial and layers here that you can use at times as well. Let's talk a little bit about scope of work. Again, request the area of excavation only. Requesting more area to locate than what you need is a drain on the facility operator's resources and can take more time. Plus, if you provide that you need to locate the entire property of this really large property, but you're really only working in one little section of it, then you may have to do multiple tickets because of the size of that property. And if you don't need all of that, there's no use in doing that. And it's a lot more for you to keep up with and a lot more for the locator to locate. So just think about it when you're putting in a locate request and determining your excavation area. Do you really need the full property of that large area locate? That's kind of the go-to for a lot of people. They just automatically put full property when they really only need a small section on the northwest corner of the house or something. So just keep that in mind. If you're working a few different areas that could be more specifically described, that might result in less tickets to maintain. So if it's a kind of a larger property that has some physical points on it that you can use as a reference to submit your locate, do that. Basically, the amount of area you request to be located will determine how many tickets you have to submit. And that's based on the scope of work limits that are in the Oklahoma law. So per the Oklahoma Underground Facilities Damage Prevention Act, each locate request cannot exceed 500 linear feet in incorporated areas or 1 linear mile in unincorporated areas. So for area locate request, how we apply that is no more than 500 foot by 500 foot area per ticket in incorporated and no more than 1 mile by 1 mile area in unincorporated areas. So this graph here just kind of shows you what that looks like for each different scenario. So if we talk about a linear path of excavation, this is work such as like mainline work, sidewalks, road construction. Again, it's one starting point, one ending point. You can use the measurement tools that we talked about earlier to kind of determine those distances. Like if you're working between blocks or several miles, you can use the measuring tools to determine how big of an area you need. You'll always want to provide starting point or stopping points when possible, and that can be an intersection or an address, or it may be driving directions up to a starting point. Include what side of the road, the alley, what easement, wherever the work is taking place along that linear path. When you're working multiple blocks, you'll definitely want to specify if you're crossing to the far side of the block when necessary. So if you're working 3 blocks and you're going to be doing some road crossings along those crossing blocks, then specify that on the ticket because that's helpful for the locator. And then as you're entering each ticket individually to keep it within the scope of work limits, be sure to cover the entire described area on each ticket on the map. So I've got a couple of examples here. The first one is incorporated scope of work limit. So that's in town, no more than 500 linear feet per ticket. And in this example, we're working on the north side of Southwest 40th Street from South Ross to east to South Lynn Avenue. So here's Ross Avenue, here's Southwest 40th. We're working east over to Lynn. That's 2 blocks. The entire 2 blocks is over 500 feet, so you cannot put all of this on one ticket. But each block is under 500 feet, so it's easier just to split it up by block, even though they're under 500 feet, because the rule or the law is up to 500 feet per ticket. So you would create 2 tickets in this job, 1 for each block span. So each ticket describes 1 block area of excavation taking place starting from the intersection. And then, of course, as you're entering this ticket, you'll map the first one with whatever you've got described on that one. So the first ticket would be from Ross to this intersection here in the middle, and you would map that to ticket 1. And then when you do ticket 2, you start from this intersection here and map ticket 2 all the way over to Lynn Avenue. Keeps it simple and for you and for the locator, easier to keep up with. If it's an unincorporated scope of work limit, so if it is outside of town or rural, then it's up to 1 mile per ticket. So in this example, we're working on the north side of East 750 Road from North 3510 Road going east for 5 miles. So since that's 5 miles, that would result in 5 separate tickets, up to 1 mile per ticket. And generally in areas like this, you have a road at each intersection, so you split it up kind of with the same logic that we talked about just a moment ago with in-town locates. So the 5 mile job in the rural area, create 1 ticket for each up to 1 mile path. Use your intersections as stopping starter points when possible, even if it's less than 1 mile. So your first ticket would be locating the north side of East 750 Road from North 3510 Road, which is this road right here, going east to North 3520 Road, so keeping it under 1 mile. So when you're dealing with large area excavation, or you're working various areas all over a large property, this is going to talk about just some of the guidelines for doing that. This specific example is related to incorporated areas. So in incorporated areas, the scope of work should be no more than 500 feet by 500 feet of area on one ticket. So when you're looking at the location on the map, you kind of determine how big of an area you need, and then you determine how many tickets you're going to need. And you can split it up, like I said before earlier, about or by physical points on the property. So this example is 6708 South Santa Fe Avenue. And let's say we want to locate all of the existing parking lots because we're going to be demoing them and redoing them. So we can see on the map here, there's 2 parking lots. There's one right here kind of on the west edge of the property, and then there's one over here on the northeast edge of the property. Both of those parking lots is less than 500 foot by 500 foot area, but more than 500 foot by 500 foot if they're together. So we're going to submit 2 tickets, and that just keeps it simple anyways in separating the job. So ticket 1 would be 6708 South Santa Fe Avenue. Locate the entire parking lot in front of the school along South Santa Fe, and it's approximately 410 feet by 70 feet. I've figured all of that out based on what I can see on the map on the aerial and using the measure tool to figure out how big that parking lot is. All of that was done on the OKI 811 portal map. And then my ticket 2 would be a totally new ticket. It can have the same address, and then specify that second parking lot. Locate the entire parking lot area on the east side of the school, and it's approximately 386 feet by 112 feet. And you don't have to be this exact as long as it's approximate and it's under the 500 feet by 500 feet. And you can use the same logic if you were going to be excavating the entire property, separating by physical objects on the school property. So just a little recap here. Starting off with excavator responsibility and preparation, avoid downtime, delayed projects and damage, prepare ahead of time by obtaining your project location ahead of time, white line the area prior to submitting the locate request, get your contact person established, and your work start date and time. Provide accurate and clear descriptions of the project area, including your address if you're working at an intersection or driving directions to the location. Keep things as clear and simple as possible, but be sure to include starting points, distances, compass directions, what side of the road, and any property identifiers that you can. Facility operators do have to have that proper understanding of the dig site in order to respond accurately and timely. Submit locate requests by the scope of work limits required by Oklahoma law. That's no more than 500 feet per ticket in incorporated areas and no more than 1 mile per ticket in unincorporated areas. And then on the OKI 811 portal map, the polygon drawn on the map must encompass the entire dig site as described on that ticket to make sure that we notify the facility operators correctly. And of course, you'll want to confirm before you dig, check your positive responses, and check the site for markings and respect the marks. We do have some excavator tutorials that are available on our website, and they are also available on the portal itself. So on the portal, if you sign into your account and go to the Excavator Hub, and then click on the Excavator Portal Tutorials, we have a lot of different tutorials there that'll show you different ticket features, ticket type features, how to enter those tickets, how to use the map, how to use some of the tools. So they're very interesting, and they show a lot of detail on how to use the Excavator portal.